we consider an artist very skilled if they can cause that transition from light to dark to be extremely soft and gentle. When we looked at the Mona Lisa in chapter 1, that he painted on the Mona Lisa literally for decades. And as those layers of paint, translucent and semi-transparent layered, to get the very softness around the lips where our mouths are kind of turned, you know, if you look at that painting and notice how soft it is, the turning of the lips and around the nose and the eyes, that shows incredible gifting and skill. All right, this is an example of a sculpture by Alexander Calder. Alexander Calder did the mobiles, but he also has this sense of whimsy and design that I enjoy his humor. So he may be an artist that you want to look at more of his work. But you can see just in the sense of shape, he's not trying to do anything with shadows or depth here. He's just playing with shapes. Here he is with some of his shapes. He lived to be very old. Look at how Alexander Calder has created with wire a line. So that would be more of a line drawing. So when you look at a work, you could say, oh, the element of line. This is about shapes. But you can see because it's sculpture, it's going to be affected by the light and dark. That's a mobile. Again, we're dealing with shape. A little bit of kinetics, balance is one of the things we'll talk about next semester. So Alexander Calder, very fun artist. Oh, this is Barbara Hepworth. So here's a woman's art. If you're interested in women's art, shape and form, just absolutely lovely. Oh, Giacometti, if you like long, thin, linear shapes. You get to see them enough, and you recognize their name, and you recognize the shapes that they use a lot. Brancusi, his name was on the board. You can see a Russian guy. You can see the shadow because it is in three-dimensional shape. You could do that on paper if you wanted. All right, now moving to number 5. One of the basic elements is texture, repeated pattern. And that's where we're looking at Van Gogh's some of his patterns. I mean, look at these things. There's just one more incredible. I mean, he's most famous for his paintings, but you look at these drawings and you're just astounded. I think that's the one that's in the textbook. But when you see them in person, you can't get over how many ways he has used a pencil or a marker to create pattern. So texture is a repeated pattern. In this case, the brushstrokes are shown individually in Van Gogh. Another artist they talk about is Van Eyck. You see how the lines hardly even touch each other almost? You can see every one of them. Here he's using more of a pen and ink look, which we could do with markers. You get one of those wider markers, you can use it thick or thin. And so he's using the marker thick and thin, in this case ink. You see a lot of movement because of the way that your eye moves with these marks that he makes. Stunning. Now here he's got some shadow. We were just talking about light and shadow. See how the shadows on one side really give us a sense of depth with this tree being very round. The sun is here moving across over to here, and we can see where it hits the branches, where it's lighter and where it's darker. Very simple, a small bridge. Just some lines, but we see without any shading necessarily, just using line, we see a lot of pattern repeated to create these textures. The texture of a thatched roof, just repeated lines. You see how the lines move around, and then look at the sense of texture, repeated dots on the ground, and the sky is dots. He's just having fun. You don't do this in 1 hour. I can tell you this takes a little bit of time doing this kind of texture. These people interest you, look at their stuff, enjoy them. Shading, this is more about value shading than it is about, almost looks like a real sculpture, doesn't it? The details in these cloth. A lot of exercises in school when you're studying art is cloth. How to create a sense of shadow with cloth, because there's so many turns when your wrinkles and ins and outs of cloth, and it's very laborious, but it's a good way to learn. Van Eyck, he's Dutch. Okay. He's cross hatching. See the way that the lines turn? I don't know, you can't see it very well, but if you look at it on my computer, when you're creating the depth, your line turns as if it's turning on that foot. So you're not making just straight lines, you're turning as if your lines are going with the foot. And by turning your lines, you're making that sense of depth. This is actually a self-portrait of Durer. He kind of had a Jesus complex, I think. But he did a lot with woodcuts. And he made woodcuts famous. But you can see, because this is probably from a woodcut, how he uses lines to create texture and depth, his own beard, repeating the line. Repeated pattern creates texture, however you want to put that. So the last element that we want to talk about with the primary elements is color. So looking at these, sometimes he's using the hard edges that we type geometric shapes. Sometimes his shapes are softer. And often his canvases, you see him here, his canvases are very large. If you go into museums and see some Ellsworth Kelly, sometimes they are as big as, really big walls. But he's playing with color and shape. And he got very famous. This is early 20th century, mid 20th century. All of these guys down here, under here, Frank Stella, Jasper Johns, Kenneth Nolan, Donald Judd, Mark Rothko. Piet Mondrian, Frenchman, he was famous for these geometric shapes with color. So they started out every bit as traditional in their technique as every artist before them. You learn how to draw, you learn how to mix colors, and you learn how to work with shapes. And then in the 20th century, they were removing the representational element from their art and creating completely abstracted or expressionistic work. And then in the case of some of these guys, they're just playing with color. How does color make you feel? How does these shapes and these designs, how do they speak to you as a viewer? And they were completely revolutionary. All of these guys listed up here. This one is Juan Miro. He's a Spanish artist, and his shapes that he did. You can almost see a foot here. But what's that thing going on here? His images, he said, are very Spanish. Henri Matisse was a Frenchman. He got into color field stuff, and he did a lot with fabrics and textures. Some of his paintings you can see, this isn't even about the woman in the picture, it's about the wallpaper. He just went kind of crazy with the wallpaper. Or he did these dancers. As he got old, in the older part of his life, his shapes got very simple, but you can still see a figure in there, right? It's abstracted, and it's kind of a basic shape, but it still feels like a dancer. And he did stuff with paper, ripping paper and shapes. This he calls a snail. But this guy started out as a traditional painter, just like the rest of these guys. They got training in how to draw, they got training in how to paint, and then they took it and made it expressive and changed it and played with color. Revolutionary at the time and just shocking, but I think it was Madame Matisse. Matisse is one of the great colorists. So some of these artists, they learned traditionally how to be a good artist, and then they distorted it and went places with it that they wanted to go to create an emotional response from their color field paintings or the shapes that they're doing. They want to elicit a response, just pure feeling, not just about it's a person or it's a landscape or it's a river or whatever, but these colors make you feel something because they recognize psychologically colors make us feel something. You usually don't paint your bedrooms red walls because red isn't a relaxing color. If you want to relax in your bedroom, paint it a calm color, light blue or green. It makes you feel sleepy, it can be peaceful. Now you can put red in your kitchen where you want it to be spicy and fiery and everybody to be happy with food. I don't know. Color really does have an impact on us emotionally. My husband's an interior decorator, not by job, but by fun. So we get these magazines, and we just love architecture. And again, it's about interior design. Stuff that we would never buy in a million years, but love to look at it because it's about shape. You see that this house is about shape. those thrusting eaves on that house and the color. And again, you see orange and blue. You'll see on the color wheel, orange and blue are complementary colors. They balance warm and cool together with that very warm orangey tones and then the cool shadows of the blue. Well, that wasn't done accidentally. That was done on purpose. That architect knew design. There's some lamps in here, and you'll see that they're all, you know, these shapes. You see how Brancusi and Arp and these guys, their work actually then translated into furniture and design. You know, these artists and these designers were all working at the same time, influencing each other. You know, whether you like it or not, you can find out from what you do like that it has a history of shape and design. I also just brought this book. It's called Butterflies, and I just think, and I think you can find some incredibly beautiful inspiration from nature just looking at, now obviously this photographer's an artist, he's got an artistic eye, so it's already been translated into some beautiful shapes and designs. His ability to see the beauty in butterflies and weirdness. Sometimes some of it's kind of bizarre. It's like, that's a critter? I mean, wow, pretty bizarre, huh? Textures.